Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new stream. It is the end of the month stream. Literally, this stream in some time zones is probably going to end at the end of the month, or it will end in next month, February. But we've had a crazy month in January, definitely with the whole speaker war that took place to start it off in terms of politics. Kind of a dry middle. And it seems like it's heating up yet again towards the end of the month. We have Donald Trump back in the, swing of things in terms of campaigning for president of the United States. Not only that, he is taking shots at Governor Ron DeSantis out of the state of Florida because it seems as if DeSantis is more and more likely to run. There's more people egging him on to run within the GOP. And definitely after the midterms, it seems as if he's more inclined to do so now. The guy won by a ridiculous margin in Florida. It's very evident that that is the case. And he's using that as a mandate for why he needs to be the nominee. A lot of new polls in the primary are showing it very competitive. Some in the early states have Trump down, even though the national polls tend to have him leading, which it's very interesting to see which one of those will be more accurate. But either way, the bottom line is that the political landscape is changing. Nobody 6-7 months ago, at least in this circle, but a lot of people in general, even people that wanted Ron DeSantis to run for president, did not really anticipate the fact that he would be wanting to throw his hat in the ring against Donald Trump, especially after Trump tried to announce and clear the field early, but that apparently is not the case. And now in retrospect, I think we could say that we were wrong about that. And the breadcrumb trail now is more evident than ever of what was really left behind. And now it seems like, oh, okay, well, now that actually makes sense. It makes sense that a lot of these, conservative news outlets have been propping up DeSantis's governorship over the past couple of years. It makes so much sense that they have been, going out of their way to kind of ignore Trump and a lot of the things he's been doing, even though Trump has been more low profile. 2022 is probably his lowest profile year since 2014 even, let alone 2015. So that absolutely is something that's playing a factor. So we have a lot of super chats already. We're going to dive into that, and then we're actually going to get to basically the recent events that have transpired surrounding the Trump-DeSantis primary, because it really does seem as if it is heating up. And Trump is going out there and he's releasing policy that is stellar. And there's no other way to chalk it up. Even the people that prefer DeSantis have been, they've not been able to critique it. You could say he's not on message, whatever. But the policy that he's putting out is perfect, near perfect. And in fact, he's trying to even outflank DeSantis now in terms of the, strengths that DeSantis has been basically showing. But furthermore, it's a little deeper than that, what's going on. Trump, you could argue, did drop the ball with the whole RNC chair race. He didn't have to do that. It allowed DeSantis to outflank him there. But it doesn't seem like that's something that's going to be in the news for quite some time. But either way, it is very disappointing what happened at the RNC. We haven't really done a live stream, during the whole election when it was ramping up, or even in the aftermath, even though I did put out the video. So we will get into that, I'm sure, later on in the stream, talking about how the GOP just still wants to lose. They're addicted to losing. It's incredible what they keep doing. And everybody's dogpiling on them for different reasons, it seems. But furthermore, either way, also YouTube Shorts. We dropped a YouTube Short on the channel yesterday. I didn't do a video, did a YouTube Short. And I think we're going to be doing more YouTube Shorts. So if you guys have any suggestions for them, feel free to send them via Super Chat. If you really want to make sure that I read them, or maybe in the regular chat later on in the stream, if you guys are still around. So we're going to get to the Super Chats really quickly here, because we have quite a few of them, and we're going to answer them as we go. So let me see if we could pull up. We have some before the stream started. We had about 5 or 6 super chats. So congratulations for sending them all in pretty early. But Olivia Williams says debates don't matter anymore after Hobbs and Fetterman. Well, they especially don't matter if your party doesn't know how to turn out voters properly. And because you have this election system, the debates are happening so late to the point where it's not like they made an impact. And it's like crazy. Watching the Fetterman-Oz debate, anybody in their right mind who would vote for John Fetterman after seeing that, which I know a lot of Pennsylvanians did, is just downright insane. But apparently, Oz did have base problems. We know that. And there's, deeper problems besides that with how that election transpired, mainly because of the fact you had top of the ticket weighing down Oz potentially. I don't know if that's entirely the case, but either way, debates matter less than they used to, really, especially with this increased polarization, because you have so many people who will do anything they can to make excuses for John Fetterman. That's why he, of all people, is in the United States Senate as we speak today. He's in the Senate. It's unbelievable. Also, Lake lawsuit tomorrow. Any chance she's sworn in? Probably not, honestly. Now, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with these lawsuits, but it seems like they tend to be more to just energize the base. It's mainly just because I don't think that the courts are really going to side with Lake. I think that if it was really something that they would consider, they would have sided with it, which again, I think that the courts in general, we'll see how it plays out, but it just really seems as if Lake, if she is ever to become governor, it's going to be by Hobbs screwing up and then a recall taking place, which is really sad because she really did deserve better. What happened with that whole entire process was a train wreck, and yet again, it's a mess. Eric CB912 says, I'm no DeSimp, but why are based people attacking DeSantis' COVID response by defending Kemp and Noam? Don't they know what happened with Trump and the South Dakota legislature? Yeah, I agree. Anybody defending Kristi Noem for COVID is just dumb. They're just dumb. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. They don't understand that she wanted to lock down, and this state legislature blocked her. And I understand that there is this Pavlovian notion to attack the DeSimps. I get that, but Kristi Noem is not your friend either. I mean, she's not. She is very much in line with the establishment on many things, including COVID initially, but the state legislature blocked her efforts, consistently blocked her efforts to potentially lock down. And you could say that she could have probably fought harder for a lockdown or something like that, but she already had a very rocky relationship with several of these speakers that she's had to deal with in the state house. But furthermore, on top of that, it's like she went out of her way in 2022 to primary a lot of those people who blocked that part of her agenda, or who made sure that she wouldn't be able to lock down. So Kristi Noem is not your friend. I don't know why anybody would be defending this woman. She's been an awful governor all around, very mid-tier governor, and there's just no reason to go out of your way to defend her. There's just not. And the way that she's just governed on many other issues, like she's been okay on guns, I guess COVID, you could say, because of the state legislature, she's been okay. But again, how many people live in South Dakota anyways? It's not like she's really, bucking the establishment to not lock down in a state that's like bottom 5 in population density. So yeah, the Noam simps are awful, completely awful. And then he continues to say the people that have been, I guess, piling on are Torino, who I don't know who Torino is, Borusewicz and Doyle. The thing is, I don't think John really, spends a lot of time researching electoral politics, to be fair. And in terms of Borusewicz, I don't know what that is. I mean, he might be like a family friend or something, but there's just no reason to. It's very bad faith, the defense of it. And I kind of went back and forth with him on Twitter about it. But yeah, John Waffle, H2 Pieces, Trump is still the best candidate. The America Last establishment wants DeSantis because they know he'll cave. And the thing is that Trump has a lot of legitimate criticisms. I don't like the fact he's out there rallying with Lindsey Graham. But the fact that Lindsey Graham is attaching himself to Trump, it also shows that he believes that that's the way the wind is still blowing. So, I mean, Trump just should not be taking the bait and having him at the rally. Like, there's no excuse for that whatsoever. And it could just mean that, if he does get into office, he will cave on a lot of things, especially in terms of foreign policy, where he has the most disagreements with Lindsey Graham on. But either way, we do know that DeSantis is being propped up by a lot of bad people for all of the wrong reasons. And that's been what I'm saying the whole time. Now, you can't say that without a lot of people throwing a temper tantrum, because it's true. And people don't want to hear it because they've consistently been told by conservative media, he's the best governor in the country. He's the strong man, the Quadillo DeSantis. And it's like, I get it. I'm not saying he hasn't done a good job as governor, but what I'm saying is just because you're a good governor, it doesn't mean that it's going to make you a good president. And we're going to talk about why in this live stream as it goes on why that is the case. And Trump has attacked DeSantis. He called him a globalist, basically. And that surprised and shocked a lot of people. And we're going to get into why. But either way, Real Texan Politics said Nikki Haley announcing a presidential run in 2 weeks, Hogan teasing a run on Twitter, and Jamison Ellis running against Dan Crenshaw all today. I don't know who Jamison Ellis is, but I do know that Nikki Haley, and we did a video on that, she is somebody who is potentially running. Asa Hutchinson on this list that's on the screen right now. Mike Pompeo as well is expected to make a decision by the end of March. And DeSantis is somebody who's likely not going to announce until after his legislation session is done. He's going to try to rack up all the policy wins, get all the positive press from conservative media, and then he's going to put his hat in the ring. And that's the way I see it. I didn't initially think it was going to be the case, but now it seems like it is. And we're going to get into it. We're going to get into the nuance of this debate as well. It's not like there's not anything in it for everybody here. But people just need to understand the actual facts at hand. So we put the poll up right now. Trump is at 67%. DeSantis is down at 22%. Undecided is there at 10%. And then we have other at 2%. So we'll leave that up as more people come into the live chat, and we'll talk about that. But Nick H says, if DeSantis were to become president, the electors will turn on him if he actually governs as a true conservative. This is true to an extent. You saw this with the fact that, he came out, gave a soft endorsement of Harmeet Dillon. And then after that, you had some people throwing a temper tantrum because of it, because they want three-time loser Ronna Romney McDaniel as the RNC chair for some reason. But it's absolutely the case that if he is actually solid, you will see some people turn on him eventually. But we're not there yet. We're not quite there. They only seem to care about electability. And, even back when Doug Mastriano won the nomination and it looked like his campaign was getting off the ground more so than it actually was, a lot of these same people were praising him and saying he's doing a great job. And then a lot of people with the whole Lake thing before the election, they were saying, oh, well, she might be on a presidential ticket one day to appeal to the Trump base or whatever. But now it seems as if they did a complete 180 and then celebrated their losses, acted like they were completely right 100% of the time, all of the way, and now they claim that they can, dictate who the nominee is going to be in 2024, even though it's not like any of their candidates were really tested in the battlefield. Had, people like Mark Brnovich and Karen Robson and many other people won their nominations, they probably would have lost by several points, and they would have blamed Trump for that too, or the base for that too, and it's like, these primaries are a problem. These divisive primaries are an issue. And I'm worried about that for 2024 as well, because a divided party is not a good thing ahead of a presidential election, which is why it's probably best we talk about it now. We get it sorted out as soon as we possibly can and go from there. Imperium Magistrate says, I hate to say it, but the constant dooming about Trump has made me want to support DeSantis just to get it over with. FYI, I still support Trump. I think that a lot of people do feel the same way, and a lot of the well-meaning DeSantis supporters feel the same way because they feel like Trump is just exhausting, and they think that, DeSantis would be more electorally viable for one reason or another, some of which may have some truth to it, others are kind of overblown. But either way, this is true. The average, DeSantis 2024 head in real life is very different than the average DeSantis 2024 head online. And the ones online, they have a network, and we've uncovered this, by the way. And I could easily release the receipts, but I don't think we're ready for that. But they have an online astroturfing network, which I think we'll talk about later on in the stream, but it's very interesting. They act the same way. They talk the same way. They're released a specific set of talking points to use. They're there to sow division. And obviously, I'm not saying that every single DeSantis 2024 supporter on the internet is a part of this, but it's also interesting because they tend to also have a lot of followers that are like organically gained, but through retweets of these other, it's a big mess. It's a big, big mess. But we're going to talk about that. And I'm not saying there aren't people on the Trump side that are doing the same thing. But what I'm saying is you have a lot of people that are acting in bad faith. They're just shills. You had some people on like the Trump side of things shilling for Ronna McDaniel too. And it's a mess. It's a big mess. And these people, you know it when you see it, really. But Yeah, Nick H says, what's more likely, Trump winning Arizona and Georgia or DeSantis winning Wisconsin? Honestly, I would say that it probably would be, I don't know, Trump I think could win one of those. I don't know if he'd win both. And it's not likely. It's not looking likely, especially if the party does try to sabotage Trump, which might actually happen. They will work overtime to sabotage him in a general. That, I think, is the number one argument against Trump's electability, more so than, he, focuses on the wrong things, or, he can't win because of the baggage or whatever. Like 1/6 is not going to be something that's going to impact 2024. Obviously, if Trump is talking about issues that the average voter he could get doesn't care about, yeah, that could cost him. Messaging could cost him. So far, messaging that's strictly campaign messaging seems to be solid, which we're going to get into when we get done with some of these super chats. But we've gotten quite a few of them. So I don't know. I think that DeSantis could win Wisconsin. I don't think that he'd be more likely to win that than Trump would to win Pennsylvania, because Trump does have this unique point of strength in these states. He can turn out voters who otherwise wouldn't vote. The electors and all these people that love electoral politics can't seem to really grasp the electoral nuance behind it. These are the same people propping up people like Matt Dolan in Ohio. It's a big mess. But goes to Franco, says Nimrata Rantawa Haley announced imminent per CNN. Yeah, and that's very possible that could happen too. Yeah, Nimrod is the real name, by the way. Nobody ever wants to talk about it, but it's not really a big deal. I'm just saying that she clearly has to lie. She lies about her name. She lies about quite a few other things too. But Imperium Magistrate says, who would you prefer for 2024, Hawley or Hawley by a lot? If Hawley was in the race, he probably would already have my endorsement. And there's many reasons for why that is. I think he's the most proven product out of them all. I think that he has better instincts than DeSantis. He's somebody who can actually turn out voters in these places like the Midwest. And he could also do very well with young voters, too. He actually brings new issues to the table, new issues to the forefront. And he's also somebody who could get decent turnout in some of these like suburbs in the Sun Belt compared to, Trump, for example. But it's not looking like he will run. I think he's going to be a potential candidate in the future, but it really seems as if Hawley or like Tucker or some of these other people aren't really going to run. But there's really not a real criticism of Hawley that I've seen that's like not cherry picking or like wouldn't also apply to somebody like Trump or like DeSantis. And even then you could argue there's fewer flaws there, but what can I say? Aaron Friedman says, thanks for the shout out for my podcast, Politidoxy. No problem. Let's see. Any other super chats here? Red Massachusetts, which is not going to happen, says, if DeSantis beats Trump in a primary, would I support him against Biden? And is there any chance I would switch support to DeSantis over Trump in the primary? A lot would have to happen for that to happen. A lot would have to happen. And it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. And we'll talk about why. Again, I'd like that. We got a lot of super chats early on. We're going to get to the meat of the stream in probably around like 3 minutes or so. We'll get to read the rest of the super chats before the stream is over. But 100% there's a chance that I would support DeSantis against Biden. Yes, there's no question. If he wins the nomination fair and square, I will say fair and square, then I will have no choice. Obviously, he's much better than Biden. He's much better than a lot of other people that could run on the right wing, for example. He's much better than Nikki Haley. Now, if Nikki Haley won the nomination, I'd be less inclined to actually turn out in the general election. For obvious reasons, might even consider third party. But if DeSantis wins the nomination, I would back him, but that's not the point. I'd be less enthusiastically backing him than Trump, and I would probably be less enthusiastic to back Trump than I would to back Trump in 2016, for example. Either way, enthusiasm doesn't seem to really matter. You saw that in the midterms or 2020 in many cases, but yeah. Let's see. Nick H says, I like DeSantis, but most of the DeSimps like him for the wrong reasons. Exactly. I like him in Florida. He's a good governor. And at the national level, he is very unproven. A lot of the critiques of him are based off of his record in Congress, and that's for a reason. He was at the congressional level his entire career. He becomes governor, is a solid governor. He wasn't the worst congressman either, but he was very generic and had a lot of flaws, the way that your average generic Republican tends to have a lot of flaws. He's playing the optics game very, very well. He's staying out of these major national issues. He gives non-answers. When he does give kind of an answer, he answers the way the base wants him to. He's very receptive to the base, which could make him very formidable in a primary, especially if it's just him and Trump, and he basically tries to say, I'm a more measured Trump. Here's what I've been doing in Florida. Here's what I'll do nationally. And he can, throw all this Trumpian rhetoric out at what he's going to do at the national level, even if it contradicts his congressional record regarding trade, immigration, foreign policy. If he does that, there's a very good chance he could win. However, if Trump goes out there and says, no, there's only one Trump. I got things done on foreign policy because of my personality, which is true. He was able to go out there and get NATO to pay their fair share. He's the negotiator, probably a much better negotiator than Ron DeSantis, for example. And if he's able to go out there and say, you're just being funded and propped up by the donors who are globalists, and you will govern as a globalist, which he did this, by the way, then I think that that's a winning message as well. So who knows? And that's the way I see it. Some people are not going to like what I have to say, and that's fine. I understand that. It's a very divisive primary. I understand why people would support either candidate. Trust me, I do. I'm not saying that Trump is without criticism. I'm just saying DeSantis, and especially a lot of the people that support him, are also not without criticism. And it may sound weird to attack one of the best governors in the country, which is true. He is one of the better governors in the country, if not even top 5 governor in the country on the Republican side, objectively speaking. But it's just because you're good in, college football, for example, doesn't mean you're going to be a star at the national level in the NFL and the pros. It's a very different level of competition. You have to deal with a lot more roadblocks. And if DeSantis really is this threat to the system that a lot of his supporters will say he's more of a threat than Trump at this point, the national media doesn't, I wouldn't say that they're not going to attack him at all, because they have attacked him from time to time, as they have attacked a lot of Republicans from time to time. But it's not the same level. If he's actually going to go on this national stage, they're going to go a lot harder on him than they're going on him now, because they want to use him to get rid of Trump. And we'll see what happens then and there. Bailey Spangler says, I won't support DeSantis for president unless he gets the Florida legislature to change the current constitutional carry bill to allow open carry. Let's see. If he currently doesn't, it only allows permitless concealed carry. We'll have to, again, he's going to try to get all these policy victories so he can go into the primary and appeal to the base that way. And we'll see what happens. But it's also interesting to see the other people in the race. If Haley and Pompeo and Pence and all these other people jump in and it's a clown car, Trump's going to cruise with his, just OG diehards to victory. I'm sure. DeSantis will still get a lot of support from the establishment because he would be the most viable challenger, make no mistake. But they're going to do this beta testing, and they'll have 10, 15 people in the race, just like they had back in 2016 against Trump. I don't know if Jim Gilmore's going to run. I don't even know if he's still alive, but, you're going to have a lot of people. Corey Stapleton, or whatever his name is already in the race. So Christopher Laurie says, honestly, I want this competitive primary to happen. It'll make Trump better at campaigning. It could. It's a risk, though. You are dividing the party. Make no mistake. Also, Nikki Haley announced, did she actually formally announce? She declared intent to run, or there's an exploratory committee. There will be an official announcement on February 15th. So we have approximately 2 weeks and 1 day before we get the result out of former UN Ambassador Haley. And Trump will, I think that it could help Trump get his 2016 energy back. He's older. But if you do put more people in this race, he can mog them all on a debate stage again. Maybe not to the same level, because it's like you have an aging quarterback. Peyton Manning, he still won the Super Bowl 2015, but, let's be real. You had Brock Osweiler starting half the season, didn't you? People are not going to be the same. And that's not a slight at Trump. That's just the way that things go. But the truth is, it's even him just reading off a teleprompter, his policy proposals, it may not be what it used to be, But compare that to somebody like Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis is like, he reads these statements tested like off of a focus group, and he tries to like kind of copy Trump in a way. It's weird. However he does it, it's a little bit strange, I will say that. And it's not really like going to bring the fire. I'm not saying he can't win. I'm just saying that, he doesn't have like that X factor. And Trump might not even have it anymore. I'm not saying that he's like ideal in that regard, but Chris says DeSantis' foreign policy is what makes me wary. I get he's a governor, but it's quite obvious he's hiding his geopolitical views so he was served the military-industrial complex. He did have some decent votes in Congress regarding foreign policy. He also had some very weak ones as well. It's really kind of a mixed bag. He may govern more interventionist than Trump did in his term, and that was with Trump having the Pentagon lie to him on many occasions about, the amount of troops in certain places, and the things that they do and the things that they did to Trump were, not so good. And DeSantis is probably going to, be a part of that same system, and what's exactly going to happen, even if his intentions are the same. So I don't know. Imperium Magistrate says, if you attack DeSantis for his old positions, why don't you criticize Tucker for having previously been a Bush globalist shill? He defended Iraq until Trump. Well, Tucker has been a lot more solid compared to somebody like Ron DeSantis on a lot of issues. And he's been a voice of the people for like 7-8 years. Like, I'm not a fan of Trump's old statements on, abortion 20 years ago, or even his current stances on gay marriage or whatever. But although the alphabet stuff, he's somehow getting in the ring about some issues, which are very important. It's a very good step in the direction for Trump. But Tucker used to be a libertarian, or he was a neocon, then he was a libertarian, and he used to work at CNN. I mean, he's been kind of just, I guess somebody who didn't have a set policy type of worldview until recently. I mean, that is the way it is. I don't think he's like an asset or anything. He's actually done a lot of things that you're not supposed to do in politics, and lost a lot of donors and a lot of support and sponsors because of it. So I don't know. There's only so much he could really do at Fox. I get that, but still, I don't think he's like, oh, he's an asset or whatever. And I'm not even saying DeSantis is. I'm just saying that there's a lot of nuance to this whole DeSantis thing that so many people just aren't getting. And when they look into it, they look at who his donors are, it's a different ballgame. So, enough with the super chats for now. Feel free to send them in. I will get to them probably in around 10-15 minutes, but we have to look at some of these recent developments, because Donald Trump went out there and he attacked Ron DeSantis. And this was the first statement on Truth, which again, he said he'd use Twitter. He's not banned on Facebook. He's not banned on Instagram anymore. So he could use all the platforms he needs now. And he's planning a return, which I said, you have to get in the arena and fight. You can't just be on some obscure, network. And even though Ron DeSantis doesn't use Twitter a lot, I get that. Who knows what his campaign's going to do when he officially announces or whatever. And he's got that little Twitter army that is paid for by a lot of people in his administration. Daily Beast is left-wing outlet, but they actually wrote about this, and a lot of people are involved in it, and they're just, all they do 24/7 is shill for this guy. And it's not like they're even shilling for like the good parts of his governorship a lot. They tend to just use him as a vehicle to trash Trump 24/7 and Trump supporters and Trump's base, and try to really transform the GOP back to a more like, Romney-esque type of GOP. And they're using DeSantis as that vehicle to kind of wedge, because they know that DeSantis is somebody that could still get a lot of support within the Trump base so long as he plays his cards correctly, which he did, while also still getting the establishment support, getting the donor support. The guy won by a lot, and I'm very happy that he did, and that Charlie Crist is not governor. But it's very important to note that he also outspent it by $90 million. If Doug Mastriano outspent Josh Shapiro by $90 million, he'd be in the Pennsylvania governor's mansion right now. You can't really disagree with that. You can't. I mean, that's just the way that it goes. If you have that much money, you set the narrative. And he's done so as governor. If he didn't spend a dime, he would still win by 10 because his record does speak for himself. But still, it's important to know the donors are flocking to him in the GOP. Very interesting. They're not flocking to Donald Trump. And those same donors flocked to Bush, Jeb Bush, and Rubio back in the day, back in 2016. So Trump goes out there and he says the fake news media was good yesterday in their coverage of my stops in New Hampshire and South Carolina. So he's on the campaign trail. Other than the Globalist Street Journal, which I believe he's referring to the Wall Street Journal, which is rarely accurate or good, they said the day was really amazing. The enthusiasm to make America great again has never been stronger. The revelations about Ron DeSanctimonious, which is his nickname for DeSantis, could he do better? Possibly. I mean, a lot of people probably don't know what the word sanctimonious means, but it kind of means like a moral grandstander to a certain degree. And he's saying that he unapologetically shut down Florida and its beaches because it's very evident that a lot of the support for DeSantis says Trump's a jab shill, which is true, by the way. I'm not saying it's not, and I'm not happy about it in the slightest. And they say that Trump locked down the country, or he critiqued Kemp for reopening too early, which again was a very unpopular thing to do for Kemp to reopen early. And it's a good thing he did it, believe it or not. It's a very good thing that Brian Kemp did. Brian Kemp did something good, yeah, I know. And furthermore, it's like, yeah, Trump was not the best on COVID. Still, he was being routinely put through the ringer for defying Fauci, according to the liberal media, consistently throughout his presidency. And he should have defied him more. He should have fired him. We get it. But there were a lot of political consequences for that. Remember, Trump, the argument against Trump regarding COVID used to be he, didn't shut down hard enough, not enough restrictions. He let millions of people die. He's like worse than a lot of these dictators that killed all these people. That's what they said. That was the narrative about Trump and COVID back then. Now that we know a lot more about the fact that shutting down was not the best option by a lot of metrics in a lot of places, now it's like, oh, well, Trump ordered lockdowns in the country, which again, he gave guidelines. He did. He gave guidelines to states. They didn't have to follow them, by the way. And he did promote the jab, which again, should he do? No, and he hasn't done so as much. Guess who else did? Ron DeSantis. Guess who also locked down his state and had many restrictions in place until September. It wasn't just April or May, what the DeSantis say. It was longer than that. Ron DeSantis locked down Florida. Trump and DeSantis on the issue of COVID are practically identical. DeSantis is just been able to get away with it more rhetorically speaking as the COVID hawk governor. And that's true. What's the rebuttal to that? Send in the rebuttal. If you're a DeSantis fan, send in the rebuttal. I'd like to hear it. Because I'm not a fan of Trump's approach to COVID. And DeSantis' approach to COVID is overrated. It is. And yes, he ran a bigger state with more elderly people. I get it. I don't think that he did a bad job. I think he did a better job than many Republican governors. And he did an arguably better job than Kristi Noem, because we know what Kristi Noem's intentions were. And Kristi Noem is not somebody that Trump supporters should be looking to as an example of good guidance just because, the DeSantis simps are insufferable. The two things can be true at once, and I know I'm going to get it from both sides for that, but that's okay. I'm going to stick with the truth. But either way, multiple things are true. And Trump and DeSantis are both pro-jab, anti-mandate. Both have promoted it as recently as mid-2022. Both have also, gone out of their way to tell people to get it or tell people they should. And many of their supporters have disagreed with them, which also disproves the notion that it's a cult thing. Trump gets booed at his rallies for promoting it, and then he stopped doing it. Okay. Which, again, he views it as an accomplishment. Maybe it's an ego thing. Okay, whatever. And then DeSantis promoted it because a lot of people did. A lot of politicians did. People like Ted Cruz. Pretty much everybody except for, Rand Paul went out of their way to promote it, or Thomas Massie, or some of these more libertarian types. But either way, I disagree with this being a wedge. And you yell people that'll say, Trump's stuck in 2020. All they talk about is 2020 and COVID. So, really, what difference does it make on this issue? I really feel like both of them are identical on the issue, and it's not a reason for or against Trump or DeSantis. I don't like Trump wheeling out Woody Johnson on stage. That's stupid. The owner of the New York Jets, the Johnson & Johnson guy, no, you don't do that. That's dumb. And DeSantis being funded by, a lot of these donors, which have ties to Big Pharma, that's not good either. And DeSantis locking down Florida, not good either. Either way, I just don't see it as a +1 for either side. I'm not saying that Trump's approach was better, but, DeSantis didn't like defy Trump saying you should probably lock down. Like that never happened. DeSantis did lock down, had restrictions in place because, if he didn't do it, his approval rating would be nil at the time. And I'm not saying you should always do things based off of if the public would support them or not. But what I'm saying is that in terms of what's going on the issue of COVID, when DeSantis did reopen partially in the summer, his approval was in the gutter. People were saying he wouldn't even win re-election at that point. And, he powered through it. Eventually, he was vindicated, won by 19, but still, let's be real here. And I went on to say, that being said, I think that Trump wasting too many resources attacking DeSantis is not wise because a lot of voters out there like both of them. They might like Trump over DeSantis or DeSantis over Trump, but just attacking him using way too many resources or just wasting a lot of time attacking him when you could be talking about things like policy, whatever. Like, I don't see it. But I understand the notion to attack him because he's being propped up by the establishment, propped up by the elite. It's better to attack the donor class, the elite, for propping him and other alternatives as well, because it's not going to just be Trump and DeSantis up, because they're propping a lot of people up. And it's probably a better idea if you want to go out there and win and complete the comeback, third election in 3 election cycles at the presidential level, whatever. You want to, run in 3 elections. You want to take that W, get that second term. Well, you're going to have to be smart about this because the GOP has learned from their mistakes in 2016. They've learned from, their fumbling of that primary away from one of their golden boys to somebody like Donald Trump. So either way, we know what's going on. It's better to go out there and return to the form, attack the elite propping him up, instead of attacking his gubernatorial record, which most conservatives believe to be very good, better than it maybe actually is. And conservative media has been propping DeSantis up, even some of these outlets that were pro-Trump during his presidency, but maybe not so during his primary campaign. And it's like, look at it. It's good for him to go out there and attack the establishment, but he's got to do it very tactfully, the way that he did back in 2016 to a large degree. And like I said, if he's going to attack him as like a warning shot or ahead of an announcement, which I'm fine with, he's going to have to do so on issues that he's going to be able to go out there and win on easily, basically show people the truth about DeSantis' history, talk about the things that I've been talking about, talk about trade. What is his stance on trade? Energy, immigration, Social Security even, which is arguably unelectable if you looked at what happened in many races in 2022. Everybody who remotely said a remark in passing about Social Security that was running for Senate ended up losing their seat. Don Bolduc in New Hampshire fumbled the ball there. That was all that was talked about in New Hampshire was Social Security. Arizona, Masters. I don't know why he pivoted to the libertarian side of things. I like Masters, but honestly, if he never pivoted from his primary campaign, it may have been a different result. Not saying it would have gotten by, but it probably would have been at least a lot closer because there was a vast shift in messaging there, and there was a weird libertarian turn for some reason. I don't know why you would pivot to the libertarian side of things, but either way, like I said, attack him on his congressional record, attack him on his donors, talk about the fact that he's not a nationalist, he's not really a populist. He might try to run as one now because the center of gravity has shifted thanks to Trump in 2016, which, again, he gets everybody gets credit for that if they do buy into it. Not going to be mad about it because it is shifting the Overton window. And then Trump actually listens to me. I don't know if he saw my Twitter thread. I'm not going to, go out here and be like, I'm influencing Trump. I don't know. Maybe he did, but he basically took my playbook an hour later and put out another statement on Truth Social. I'm not taking full credit for this, but just look at it. Trump went out there and he attacked Club for Growth, which has been a, libertarian, I guess you would say, just like economically right-wing but socially apathetic donor group, super PAC, whatever you want to call it. They fund candidates, they make endorsements, and he says, I've been taking on the Club for No Growth for years. We worked together for a long period, but they couldn't get away from China, Europe, Asia, and parts unknown. He said, they know I won't play that game. I'm America first all the way. That's the only hope we will make America great again. And he says, DeSantis, calls him Ron DeSanctimonious yet again, who I made governor in both the primary and general. So he's trying to throw out this like, oh, it's disloyalty that he'd run, which, again, you could say, I mean, like, either way, if DeSantis is actually a better option than Trump, I wouldn't care about the disloyalty thing. I really wouldn't. I'm not loyal to one person. I'm loyal to actually getting things done, for sure. The individual does matter, but I'm saying if there is a better option than Trump, I'm picking that better option, regardless, right? I just not sold on DeSantis at the national level. But then he said, who I made governor in both the primary and the general is also a globalist, and so are his donors. Jeb Low Energy Bush was next to him last week. Check past. He says check the past, implying the congressional record. So he calls out his donors, which I said he needs to do. He calls him a globalist, which I hinted that he probably needs to do. And, I mean, people are going to say, well, Trump is saying he made a globalist a governor, which, again, you could say he may not have needed to say it then and there because that did lead an attack line open. But either way, it's like this. He made somebody governor in a primary field. They've done a good job. Doesn't mean they're going to govern, the way they do at the national level. Because DeSantis has succeeded not by being ultra-nationalist or anything at the governorship. He's not, you can't really be like a nationalist governor. You can do the baseline stuff, which he's done, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he would do the full necessary, things that you need to do to govern as like a national populist. Economically speaking, a lot of question marks there. We don't really know where he sits on a lot of issues, especially Social Security. His stance is like with the Tea Party, not really the most electable in current day. In terms of his stance on immigration, look at what he voted for there. So either way, what we do know is that Trump is attacking him on this issue, and that's a much better way to attack him, I think, moving forward if he does, and if DeSantis does step in. Now, DeSantis hits back. DeSantis goes out there and says, I got reelected. And that's basically what he says. He says the fact that, check the scoreboard, 19 point whatever percent, etc. Which, again, that is true. Although, again, John McCain won his Senate race by like 40 before he ended up losing the presidency to Obama. It doesn't always correlate to a presidential election victory, but whatever. He's staying out of it, basically. He didn't really mention Trump by name. He's staying out of it. And that might actually work out for him beneficially, because Trump in 2016, he would, attack his opponents, even though DeSantis isn't a direct opponent yet. They would take the bait. DeSantis is not taking the bait, which leads me to kind of question the fact that, hey, maybe he's going to approach it differently. I don't know. Though with the clown car coming in, it's probably going to be easier for Trump to mog them all. But either way, it's interesting to see what's really going on. And then you'll have people that are like, Trump needs to attack DeSantis even if he's not in the race because he attacked everyone back in 2016. That's true. But the people he attacked, like, McCain, Romney, they weren't really that well liked by the GOP base. DeSantis has a more favorable rating among primary voters, I think, than Trump even does at this point. So you have to be very tactful and careful about how you do it because of the fact that so many people just are of the belief that he would be really solid at the presidential level, even if they like Trump too. And he may actually get in there and surprise people. He might find a way to win the primary. But what I'm saying is if Trump wants to win, he's going to have to go out there. It's going to have to be a policy-based approach too, but he's going to also have to bring the energy at the same time. I will say that. And Trump went out there today, and let's pull this up. I don't believe I got to play the audio. But Trump went out there, and he's releasing these policy platform type things. He did one for education, did one for big tech, and did one for the gender stuff. He never leaned into the alphabet issues his entire political career. Now he understands that DeSantis has made, waves by taking on these culture war issues in Florida. For example, they say culture war is what the media says. I don't really like that term because if the left leans into it, they don't call it culture war. They call it, I don't know, like equality and justice or some leftist buzzword, right? But either way, what we do know is he's going out there, he's talking about banning puberty blockers for children. He's talking about ending, child sex changes, all these things. He never would bring this up before. Now there's pressure on. He's going out there very measured, very calm, and he's just attacking in terms of not attacking as in like attacking DeSantis, but he's just attacking in terms of policy. He's got that dog in him in terms of policy. The energy level, not necessarily what it used to be, but the policy is there. And if he does this and he stays on message and he talks about all the right things, hits on all the right cylinders, I can't see the guy lose it. I really can't. And I mean that. Now, if he gets sidetracked too easily and does not stay on message and talks about things that don't matter or old personal grievances that just, the ordinary people that put him in the White House to begin with don't care about as much, he's not going to win. And the GOP establishment will do everything they can to sabotage him in a general election regardless, just like they did in 2016. He's going to have to go out and beat both parties again. And if he's going to go out there and do this policy stuff, it's interesting. Now, the average voter probably doesn't see all of this, which is a problem. He's got to get back on social media. He's got to make waves. And honestly, he may have to cause some controversy, but it's going to have to be better controversy than he's been causing, or controversy that actually opens up a conversation. Go back to the whole, immigration stuff. Tear off that Band-Aid again, because, that's what really got people talking about his campaign. He went out there and he said, Mexico's they're not sending their best. They're sending all of these people. Some I assume are good people. He said the same thing verbatim, actually, pretty much, and it didn't get any media coverage. So he's going to have to do some things. That's going to have to cause controversy, but it's going to have to be good controversy. It's going to have to be things that people aren't going to be able to, sit there and retort without looking like a total leftist. And that's the way it is. So I think that we've covered everything we've really needed to cover here, but Trump is going out there and he's talking about policy, talking about issues that he never talked about ever before in history, which is honestly a good thing. Because I've always said this was one of his blind spots. And I'm not expecting he's going to go out there and be super right-wing on all the alphabet issues. I'm not saying he's going to call for a Obergefell to be overturned or whatever. Not like it would really hurt him in an election if he did, because most people just don't care about it. But the fact that he's going out there and he's taking on these issues, it's a step in the right direction. I will take it 100% of the way. And it can also change the culture in the right wing as well, because the right caving on a lot of these issues is also kind of been a problem, and I do honestly blame Trump for some of that. I feel like if it wasn't for Trump supporting, gay marriage, whatever, the approval rating for it would be much lower in the GOP today, and I don't think that's really disputable. But Arnie Hernandez says, what's your view on Legsit or Blexit? I do believe, though, that the GOP needs to focus 100% on white working class turnout. Well, I'm not going to say, I don't really know much about the organizations themselves, but the notion that we're going to get all these black people to leave the Democrat Party or whatever, it's we've been trying this for a long time. It's not going to work, and different groups have different interests, and we could probably do a little bit better maybe with young black males, for example, if we, take a stand on issues like this, for example, but it really seems as if the GOP doesn't even do that. So either way, I think that there are going to be roadblocks to that, and we need to focus on the base. And if you do that, you're probably going to peel off some support from those groups anyways. But either way, you got to do what you got to do to win. That's pretty much plain and simple. Caving or compromising your message, like I feel like a lot of Republicans did regarding, BLM, for example, back in 2020, it didn't help turn out the base, and you're X amount of votes short in some states. Yeah, I wonder why. You could blame other stuff, but you could also look in the mirror, because that's also important. I mean, we can always do more to improve regardless. You can always go out there and win against, something that's against you, right? You can always maximize your strength. And if you don't do that and leave a lot on the table, then you're just shooting yourselves in the foot regardless of the outcome. John Waffle, H2P, says people need to start donating against McConnell. I think he might retire. But yeah, McConnell needs to go. I think that probably is going to be something that's going to be dealt with after 2024. I know that Trump really does not like McConnell. He's defended McCarthy. I've called him out for it, even though it seems like the standoff has made McCarthy as good as he possibly can be, at least for this Congress. But in terms of Mitch McConnell, he's no good. No good at all. All New Year 2020 says, what would the Florida 2022 election look like with Freed instead of Chris as the Dem nominee? Probably about the same, honestly. Fried was an awful candidate, but Chris really ran his campaign into the ground as much as possible. It was like he was just taking a dive. I mean, the guy was out there. Didn't he make his running mate like somebody who supports Fidel Castro? And it's like, you're running in Florida. Like, what are you doing? Like, I don't know. Probably about the same. Fried is also awful. Thank God her name's probably going to be removed from the gas pumps or whatever now that she's not the agricultural secretary. But yeah, Garrett Veronikar says, who would be the best candidate to face off against Bob Casey for Pennsylvania Senate seat in 2024? Maybe Parnell could win. I don't know who can win that. I mean, Casey's not going to win by a lot compared to his recent elections, but he's probably going to outrun Biden by around 3. So it really depends. Who knows? Who really knows? Dollar for Dollar says, can you make a right-wing commentator tier list, and could you include names like the Tates, Peterson, Bill Maher, Kanye, yourself, and Thomas Sowell? They have tier list templates out there. I'm actually on a couple of them, I believe. And I wouldn't consider people like Bill Maher to really be right-wing, even though you could just put them out there, centrists or whatever. I don't know. I'd make probably some enemies if I did that. I don't really want to. But yeah, it is what it is. I mean, I have commentators that I like, and I would say I am one of them. It is funny because if I was just, a random normie out there, or just like somebody who didn't make content, probably would be a very big fan of my channel. It probably would be one of my favorites, if not the favorite channel to watch. I was just watching some of my old videos last night because I couldn't sleep, and I'm like, okay, I made this? Wow, very informative. But Nick H says, is Rufus electorally viable? Yeah, Rufus is so electorally viable. Rufus would win Washington, D.C., he'd win Washington State, he'd win Maryland, he'd win New Jersey, he'd win New York, he'd win Vermont, he'd win everybody who would crawl over broken glass to vote against Trump, but also for DeSantis. It's like crazy. You talk about esoteric lolcows on the internet. Rufus might take the cake, and some of you guys probably don't even know who Rufus is, but for those who don't know, he is one of the people that Ron DeSantis may be paying, or not DeSantis, but his people around him. Christina Pushaw, for example, it's one of his leaders in Florida. She has this network where she pays people to just attack Trump, prop up DeSantis. And, she's somebody who's a big Zelensky shill. Said it was her best night of her life politically was when Zelensky won. It's like, really? Like, Trump won in 2016. Like, in this country, you care more about an election in Ukraine shilling for Zelensky, who's not our friend and is very corrupt by many metrics, one could say. And that's the leader of DeSantis. And another one of his press secretaries or deputy press secretary said Trump needed to be impeached and removed for 1/6. Like, these are the people propping up DeSantis, guys. It's not like they're propping him up because he's better than Trump or whatever. And it's like they have a troll farm. There's this Max guy, and like he was shilling the jab, telling people to get it to own the libs less than 2 years ago. Now he attacks Trump for shilling it, and it's like, you have no right to talk. How do these people even have these followers? There's plenty of these people. They use my real name constantly too, which is how I know they're like a part of this group chat, because it's not really that easy to find. Like, I'm not upset about it. I'm not going to say it's like doxing or whatever because I've given it out, but like, it's very clear that there's this evident calculated effort to bring down the people that back Trump, which I'm not even like the biggest Trump backer. I'm getting it from the pro-Trump people. I'm getting it for the pro-DeSantis people. But like, even the Daily Beast wrote about this article, like they pay a network to push DeSantis constantly. And a lot of these people are pushing him for the wrong reasons, and they have, tens of thousands of followers on Twitter, for example, and they say the same talking points over and over again like robots. They're not robots, they're real people. But I've been reached out to people that said that they've been reached out by this team that has, offered them basically payment to shill for DeSantis's campaign. And this is real. This is actually happening. And these people are not necessarily like acting in good faith. They're not. And that's the way that it is. So Not saying every DeSantis supporter is paid for. I don't even know if Rufus is paid for. He's been around for a while. He's been on forums. He's been, he said Trump would like lose Indiana and Montana in 2016, which is why he has no business talking about politics. And his midterm predictions were identical to mine, so he has no business talking about how like bad that they were or whatever, which again, everyone's were awful. I'm not going to say I had good predictions during the midterms. I don't think anybody did, for the record. But yeah, no, there's a payroll out there. There is a payroll. And these people are being paid. And I'm sure there's some Trump people as well. The people that are shilling for Ronna McDaniel in like calling Harmeet Dillon a desimp, which is just not true and is dumb. Like, these people are also probably maybe not being paid, but acting in bad faith as well. So I'm not changing any minds either. But it is what it is. Eric CB912 says Trump must have better messaging. Nobody cares about his endorsement records, NFTs, warp speed, and the 2020 election anymore. And to a large degree, he does need better messaging. This messaging right here is good. And he did it for education, did it for big tech. The NFT thing was dumb, a head scratcher. I would never want to own any NFT. I would never make an NFT. I would never buy a Trump NFT. DeSantis's baseball card for $20,000 that he was giving or selling was also not a good thing, for the record. Nobody's going to talk about that, by the way. But, it doesn't excuse Trump's NFTs and the warp speed thing. Bad messaging. 2020, I'd rather focus on what we can do to change the way the GOP views elections in the future to make sure we have a winning strategy at the as Biden would say, the battle box. So I will say that is true, 100%. Let's see. Keep going down here. I don't want to miss any super chats. I might have to not put some on the screen just so I get them all. Member chats here. We have One American Prediction says, I like the new camera. It's the same camera, but I mean, the lighting might be different. But thank you, I guess. Do you think DeSantis has a chance in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania? I don't think he has a shot in Pennsylvania. I think you saw in the midterms what Trump not being on the ballot does in rural PA. Wisconsin, I think he has a chance in because the state party is more competent, and those suburbs of Milwaukee would probably come out for him a little bit more than they came out for Trump, and the rurals tend to be in some realignment. I don't think it would mean DeSantis is guaranteed Wisconsin, but I think he has a chance in Wisconsin. Absolutely. Let's see. Olivia Williams says, I worry Trump will pick a super weak VP. That's another criticism. I mean, like, people like Noam Stefanik, I mean, even like his own base that likes MTG is like not on board with the whole MTG thing if he picks MTG, which again, like, she now is like getting hit from the base as well. Like, nobody seems to be on board with her after the whole McCarthy thing. I mean, that might blow over. But picking her to be VP, I don't really know if she has the political capital to really expand. Because think about it, Trump needs to do strategically what he could do to maximize the amount of votes. He's going to have to pick a VP that's going to be a little bit less Trumpian. He picked Pence in 2016, and that was the right move at the time. And maybe, he could have picked somebody a little bit more loyal or whatever. But, I mean, either way, that was a good move. Helped him get the evangelicals on board, etc. The Southern Republicans, in some of those suburbs there, because, Pence is somebody who is, even from Indiana, but he's like a Southern style conservative. Like him running in Georgia would probably, get him the state by a couple more than Trump would. But either way, that's beside the point. Trump is going to pick somebody else. I think somebody like Kim Reynolds out of Iowa would be solid. Somebody that can, get you need somebody that does relate to the Rust Belt. Hawley would be great, and that's like a double down on the base pick. But Hawley, I think, could be a very articulate debater. I think he would, defend Trump in terms of his policies in a great way, keep him in check, get like increased turnout in the, in the rural Midwest to the amount that he would need. That'd be the Midwestern strategy. There's plenty of strategies that he could do. Also, maybe I would say somebody from Nevada, but there's really not anybody. You get Nevada, you shore up Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, you'll win. But the benches in those states' GOPs are just so weak to the point where there's nobody that's going to be chosen from those places. Tickle this Elmo says 2016 to 2020, Trump would never have gone out of his way to ensure that McCarthy is speaker. I disagree, actually. The same Trump that endorsed Paul Ryan and John McCain in the 2016 primaries. I mean, like, I will say that the ideology is kind of like shifted to more of defend my past record at all costs. I'm not a fan of that, but that's the way he is. He is somebody that always never gives up, doubles down. His whole life mantra has been that. Even when he's wrong, he'll like change the topic. Or when he thinks or knows he's wrong, he'll change the topic. He doesn't admit it. So we'll see if he changes the topic. But I'm not a fan of the whole McCarthy thing. He should have at least supported the standoff, because that at least allowed McCarthy to be more solid, because he has no power and is controlled by the Freedom Caucus, which even our opponents on the left dreadfully admit. Moon Market says, I'm going to DeSantis, man. I want Trump, but I just don't think he could win a general. And that's a fear a lot of people have, because the GOP establishment will do anything possible to sabotage him. So All New Year 2020 says, do you think some dark blue rural counties like Agala, Lakota, South Dakota, Taos, New Mexico, or the Mississippi Delta will become close and flip red? No. I mean, just demography will doom Republicans in those places. Also, how did Inyo flip in California? I mean, I guess Newsom was just not good. I mean, Orange County has not gone Republican in any race statewide, I believe, since 2014? And Orange County flipped Republican this cycle in 2022 against for a candidate that had literally no funding and was going up against the Newsom powerhouse that squashed a recall easily. So, yeah, it's interesting. But DeSantis won by more than Newsom did. Very, very, very big numbers there in Florida. Stupid Donkey says 0 chance Trump wins in 24. In the process, Trump will ruin DeSantis' chance for 24 or 28. Well, if you have a divided party, that is true. If you have a divided party, you're going to doom your chances at victory. And you don't want that. And it's possible you could win despite it, but it's a little bit deeper than that. Let's see. Any other super chats? We have more. I want to make sure we get to them all. Ghost of Franco said, would the regime even let Trump win in 2024? I doubt it. Now, they could. He could win. But I'm saying that you will see the GOP establishment, the donors. They will bail in the general. They will do everything they can do to boost down ballot Republicans, but they will leave Trump out to dry at all costs. And that's the way it is. And they got on board in 2020 because they had no choice. And even then, Trump's, the people surrounding Trump did everything they could do to, make sure that he was weak as he possibly could be. And yeah, it's not a good thing at all. And there are flaws to Trump that are not going to go away. And, I've kind of accepted that already. You're not going to have the magic of 2016 back. There's only one 2016. There's also only one 2024. So it'll be interesting to see what goes down here. But Christopher Laurie says, if GOP hosts primary debates and if Fox News hosts them, I wonder how hostile they'll be towards Trump and give it DeSantis, Haley. And oh, absolutely. They did this back in 2016 too. We'll see what goes down. But Fox News is not Trump's friend. They were during his presidency because they had no choice. You have people like Hannity. They're just going to go along with the GOP status quo. And when Trump's out of power, they'll talk about how they want to, go after and take out the president of Russia and start another train wreck of a war. Because that's what they want. They are, at heart, neocons. That's what they've been. They're a part of that GOP establishment. David Zentaris says Bill Maher is a non-woke leftist. I just say he's like a classical liberal type. He's a, he's a centrist. He's like an 08 Democrat. I don't know if an anti-woke leftist is what I would refer to him as, because I don't think he's like leftist on like a lot of the leftist stuff. But he's not our friend either, and we need to stop propping him up so much. Like, if he wants to use his platform to move leftists to the center, fine. I'm not going to oppose it. It's pretty evident that they have lost some people, some normies in the middle, but this is not our guy either. So, All New Year says, what do you think about Bob Casey Sr.? He's like an old school Dem. His son is not as respectable or as like much of a blue dog as he is. And the only reason why he's been able to get any popularity at all in the state among independents is because of his last name. Same thing with Beshear to an extent in Kentucky, which is something we're going to have to deal with this year. So Luis Ortiz's thoughts on Michigan Senate race, we're screwed. We don't have a bench. We have nobody. I mean, you would have to like run John James again, but is he going to lose 3 seats in a row? I mean, like, it would depend on the position that we'd be in, but I don't think that there's really any chance we get that seat. Even though Stabenow's retiring, they would have to put up like a horrific candidate, and we'd have to find somebody out of thin air to run for that seat. And I don't see any bench. And you'll have the loser elector bros. Oh, we need Peter Meyer. Like, really? Like, the guy outspent his opponent who didn't even live in the district in a primary and like lost by 5-10. Like, the guy would be O'Day on steroids. I mean, the guy's more liberal than O'Day even. Like, at least O'Day was in Colorado. He kind of like, thought that he had to be, which he really didn't. But Peter Meyer's a loser, weak loser, creepy weirdo leprechaun, would definitely get shellacked in a primary and a general, by the way. I probably would leave that ballot blank for all we know. And people will give me hate for saying that, but these are the same people who like wouldn't vote for Mastriano or wouldn't vote for all these people. But it's like, I know what I'm getting. Peter Meyer was a partisan Democrat by and large, voted with Biden like 70% of the time or something like that when he was in the House. Like, he did it to himself. The last name there could have been worked to his advantage, but no, he just dropped the ball, voted to impeach Trump, attacked Republicans on Twitter 24/7, a lot more than he voted for any conservative legislation. That's true. Always on all these key bills, just handing over support to the Democrats. No, I always say vote red no matter who is like the good option now, because that's what the left does, but yeah, I don't have to say that I'm going to be voting for this guy or like that I would, especially now. Like, there's no reason. Very few exceptions. I would put him and probably Brad Raffensperger in that mix, but that's pretty much it. Just leave it blank. We're not going to have to deal with that because he's not going to be the nominee, thank God. But whatever. Macintosh says Trump needs to stop having Graham on stage with him at his rallies and return to giving out Graham's... Yes, exactly. He doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to do all this stuff. And it's like, if he has to prove to the base that he's on their side, probably not a good idea to be parading around Lindsey Graham. Just because Lindsey Graham supports him doesn't necessarily mean that Trump himself is like, going to be weak, because there's a lot of most weak people don't support Trump. But Graham is vying for that job. He's going the way the wind blows. Trump doesn't need to be having him by his side. Have McMaster there, have Duncan, have Norman, have all these good people in South Carolina there that do exist. Lindsey Graham, I don't know about Tim Scott. I don't think he's like endorsed. He's probably going to endorse DeSantis. But a lot of the weak people in South Carolina, Nancy Mace, for example, keep them the F away from his candidacy. They're not going to help him. They're really not. You don't need these people advising you or being on your team. Like, you're going to need some support within the, old guard. Obviously, Trump had people like Newt Gingrich supporting him back in 2016. Lindsey Graham is like the worst of the worst. There's just no reason for it. And Trump called him a rhino like less than a year ago, too, which is kind of like the biggest thing of all. Nick H says Max Norda. Yeah, that guy's definitely on the payroll. I mean, he came out of nowhere. He supported the vaccine, like, constantly. And, like, it's still up. The tweets are still up. And then he says, oh, Trump is a fake conservative because he pushed the jab. And it's like, you did too. You literally did too. Nick H says, considering the suburbs have fallen off a cliff since 2016, if Trump is going to win Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, he'll probably need to do better with the WWC than he did in 2016. Do you think that will be realistic? Yeah. I think that I really think that he would have to do. I think that it would come down to him just getting the turnout margins up. But the problem is that in these places like Michigan, the state party's broken. Wisconsin, like, there would have to be an apparatus built up. It could happen, but I don't know. Like, that's what it comes down to. I really do believe that it's like, I mean, it is possible. I believe it could happen, but I don't think it's like the most likely course of action that he does like a whole lot better. But in a place like Wisconsin, I think like in these rural areas, like he did better than he did in 2016 in many places. Like he could get over it. Pennsylvania, maybe, because Biden's like the home state factor is kind of a little bit out of the way now. But there will have to, I mean, Biden's approval, that's going to have to be monitored as well. Like what is that going to be at? Because it's not as low as it should be. And most people just kind of forgot about it. So who knows? And because he is in the, he is a Congress opposing him, now maybe it could go up or it could go down. We'll have to see. Olivia Williams says, is there a better option than Trump or DeSantis? Like I said, if Hawley was running, I'd be more open to consideration of supporting him, but he's not in the race and likely will not be in the race, so it doesn't really matter. Sam Matson said, at this point, I care much more about down ballot races like breaking my disastrous trifecta. For that, we've already flipped all but 2 of the rural seats. Yeah, we have that's a lot of work to do in some of these Midwestern states or even Pennsylvania where you lose chambers of these places. There's a Democrat speaker of the Pennsylvania House, even though Republicans technically have a little minor advantage there. And it's a big mess. Luis Ortiz, his thoughts on Mark Robinson for governor in North Carolina, great. And he's leading the polls now, which again, that doesn't really mean anything, but a poll did come out having him up by a few points over his opponent. And people are like, he's going to be like Mastriano 2.0 or whatever. It's like the guy won statewide by more than anybody on the ballot back in 2020. I mean, the guy's a statewide official. He has connections. He has donors. He's got great optics. I mean, the guy's like, he has this very baritone voice. He's just awesome. Everybody loves the guy. Like, there's no reason to oppose him whatsoever. And, like, who else is going to be that nominee? Like, Dan Forrest? Like, I mean, he could lose because it is true that North Carolina does tend to favor Democrat governors even when they vote Republican at the presidential level. But I will say that he is not a bad pick whatsoever, even for electoral reasons. And anybody just moral grandstanding about it is just a loser on the internet. Tickle This Elmo says, is Virginia shifting red? It's like it shifted left. It might be stopping the shift, but shifting right. I think it'll be less Dem in 24 than it was in 2020. I don't know if I would say the state is going to come back and boomerang into a Republican state, though. Chris to the J says, I think you're downplaying COVID, especially with effects of the jab. Lots of evidence, and DeSantis is the only one looking into it. Is he really looking into it? I mean, what is he doing? He's still on the website. It's recommended for people, I believe, of 5 and up. It's recommended. It's not mandated, but it's recommended on the Florida website, or it was, and it still is. So I wouldn't necessarily say that he's like this big hawk on it. It's all about optics. DeSantis is playing the optics game. It is working out for him to a large degree politically. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to be way better than Trump as an executive. And then you could say maybe Trump's fallen off a little bit, and I'll give it to you. But it's still, as long as if he can come out here and stay on message and keep this stuff up and focus on this, yeah, I think that there's no reason not to still support Trump. That's the way I see it. I don't think he's what he was. Ideally, you'd have somebody better come along, but I don't really see anybody. Trump was the greatest president in our lifetimes, objectively speaking. And this is something a lot of people agreed with before he left office and suddenly became a pariah in some of these more establishmentarian right-wing circles. But yeah, there's no reason for me to not really support him. Manny says, Joe Blystone for Ohio Senate met Dolan as a rhino. Dolan is an awful rhino. And yet people saying, oh, he'll win. Will he actually? Dolan is a free trade enthusiast. That in and of itself will make him underrun the presidential ticket, especially if Trump's the nominee, because that's what a lot of Ohio does care about. And Dolan on social issues is just weak or liberal. And it's at that point, the apathetic people are probably just going to stick with the incumbent. I'm not saying Dolan would even lose, but I'm saying he's not going to win by Portman margins. I mean, Dolan is not Portman. And Sherrod Brown is not exactly the weak opponents that Portman had on off years. Or in the case of 2016, a washed-up governor who ran a campaign far more incompetently and worse than anybody who lost this cycle on the Republican side. So, yeah. I don't know about Blystone. He doesn't really have a lot of, I think, like big money support. So I don't know. We'll see if it gets off the ground or if he runs. But what can I say? Luis Ortiz says, will Pete Ricketts be worse than Ben Sass? No, he'll be better. He's not like a total, like, solid, 100%, like, I guess you would say America First senator, but he'll be just like, I guess you would say, on par with the other senator there. So it is an upgrade. Trains29 says, will the RNC re-electing McDaniels, it's McDaniel, but I know what you mean, and making 24 even harder, how do we navigate around that and succeed? The nominee would have to really be on board with changing the way we view these elections and how we really do turn out. It would have to be other people that would have to really lead the charge on it. And maybe it's possible that you will see more pressure on McDaniel, but still, the fact is she now says she's not going to serve another term. She's there till 2025. Then she can be replaced with whoever. She ran for one more term just to oversee one more election. And if Trump does get that nomination, it's very possible that she's going to do everything she can to weaken his agenda and messaging yet again. And what is that going to do? That's going to make sure that he doesn't have a chance in 2024. So be careful. They made a very dumb error, and she'll weaken whoever's messaging is because she's just incompetent. And she's like the leader of the party, a spokesperson of the party, the chairwoman, they say. And what does she do? She loses 3 election cycles, which, again, I'm not going to say she would have to win them all. I get it. 2018 is like you had a president in there with an approval in the mid-40s, and you lose some House seats, and you surprisingly gain in the Senate. It's like, okay, whatever. It is what it is. 2020, though, the consistent weak messaging, just the direction of the party, what they focused on more so than not, horrendous, horrific. You fumbled something. Even though the back was against the wall, you still could have got over the hump. Even though the back was against the wall as much as possible. And then 2022, there's just no excuse for that. That's just a horrific showing whatsoever. And that's not only her fault, but she played a big role in it. And a lot of other people did that still have jobs or got promoted in the case of Tom Emmer, which was a total disaster. Nick H. says, I thought we had a real shot at turning Michigan into a leaner tilt R state, but I'm worried we screwed. Yeah, exactly. It's a mess. Big mess. FM32047 says, is it bad that I worry about Cooper, Bashir, and Bell Edwards knocking off Tilt? Yeah, no, Bell Edwards is not going to knock off Cassidy. Bashir's not going to knock off McConnell, although we could have worse losses. But if that happened, no, he would lose. Senate races are vastly different than governorship races. Roy Cooper, if he's like the presidential nominee or on the ticket for the Democrats in 2024, he's not going to help flip North Carolina in their column whatsoever. Probably not. I will say that it's very likely that all 3 of those are not going to be the Republican nominees come 2026. I mean, you have Cassidy, who's an impeachment 7 member, McConnell, who's Mitch McConnell, and you also have Tom Tillis, who's very weak on a lot of issues, even though he probably gets by in the nominating process if he wants it, although he should face opposition. We'll see. But either way, we're all caught up. We are all caught up. It is February on the East Coast. The end of the month stream is concluded with the end of the month, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens politically over the next month or so, because you do have this primary heating up, and it is something that is a very big deal, and you have a lot of people on different sides about this debate. So far, the poll, we put it up. Let's see what the end results are. Trump with 61%, DeSantis with 25%, 14% undecided or other. So there you go. Trump still has support of around 61% of the viewer base. And I think that the messaging recently has kind of played a role in that. Now, we'll see what happens. I'm not somebody that's going to say that Trump is guaranteed victory in the primary. I thought that was the case a year ago. I'd probably change it up a little bit now. I'm not somebody that's going to say that it's going to be easy for him. It's going to be very difficult. If he has that dog in him, he's going to be able to go out there and take it. If not, well, DeSantis and the conservative media and establishment that will probably back him, even if DeSantis is somebody that has good intentions, they're going to do everything that they possibly can do to get them over the finish line, and they'd be much stronger. Although with the clown car that's being formed, the clown car that they are building as we speak, yeah, I mean, if you split the vote with people like Haley, Pompeo, Hutchinson, who is the weakest person that we know with the last name Hutchinson, very different than Aiden Hutchinson, who's a total beast and a dog. And then you have John Bolton. Yeah, that's going to actually come into fruition. I want him to run. I want Trump to be on the debate stage with all these people. Liz Cheney, Chris Christie, who a lot of people are saying is going to run. Larry Hogan, Noam. I don't really think she'd run, but you never know. They're keeping her on the bench. Pence, the Bernie supporting Republican mayor of Miami, I believe. Well, maybe not Bernie. Or did he support Bernie in the primary? No, he supported Hillary Clinton, I believe. Hillary Clinton, he supported Clinton over Trump in 2016. And then you have Sununu, who I don't think would run for president in any circumstance, but would actually shake up that primary up there in New Hampshire. Probably still wouldn't win it, though. And all these people like, Ducey, Youngkin, like these people are probably not going to run, if we're going to be honest. Kasich, like, you really think any of these people are going to run? They wouldn't be viable. They wouldn't be. They just wouldn't. It is interesting, though. You do have a lot of people that are going to jump in this race. And maybe they'll jump out in time. Like we saw this with the whole Bernie Sanders effect. You saw Bernie. He was riding high. He was in the betting odds in like the 90s or whatever to win the nomination after, I believe, New Hampshire or whatever, Nevada. South Carolina came around and Biden won. Everybody dropped out before Super Tuesday. And then what happened then? The establishment got their way. Now, it's not, by the way, it's not like Bernie Sanders is actually like a threat to the establishment, but he's like the nominal, like, oh, I'm like the leftist side of things. Like they don't really like him for like economic reasons or because he like gets in the way electorally, even though they finally have gotten his people to fall in line and him to fall in line. But either way, it is very interesting what's going on. But Luis Ortiz says, I'm concerned Trump will appoint people like Bolton. Yeah, he's not going to appoint Bolton now. I mean, Bolton's viewed as like a traitor. He supported Biden over Trump in 2020. Like, there's just no way. But what can I say? Is what it is. All right, guys, we're going to end the stream. Like it before you go. Subscribe. Well, actually, we got some super chats in here. Enclave Nationalist, his thoughts on Andrew Tate's political compass. That I've seen that. That's cap. There's just no way that he's like middle of lib left. Like he's definitely lib right. I wouldn't say that he's like super conservative or whatever. He'd probably be like on the line, like 3 to the right. He's very capitalistic, very materialistic. Like if I took the political compass as Andrew Tate, I'm gonna end up probably in the lib right quadrant. Maybe, current Andrew Tate, now that he's like converted to Islam, whatever, would be a little bit higher up, more authoritarian. He's kind of like, I guess, reforming some of his views, whatever, on some social issues. He's less, promiscuous as he used to be, promoting less promiscuity, etc., whatever. But he's not, I wouldn't say he's lib left. That's just his major cap. Sam Madsen said Dolan also supports red flag laws. Vote Republican so we could take your Second Amendment rights away as a great message to run against Brown on. Yeah, it's not. I mean, Brown, you run on him, you attack him. You could say he's very far left, and he's a fake populist is actually a good way. Like he's opposed all of Trump's policy that a lot of Northeast Ohio voted for Trump for, even though they may not have voted Republican in the past. So whatever. But yeah, no, is what it is. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Like the stream down below. Subscribe. Hit the bell. Join the website if you want exclusive content. Might drop an exclusive video either tomorrow or Thursday. I'll stream later this week as well for you guys. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Red Eagle out.